Real quick before we get into today's video, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon for all their support, because without their help, the upgraded content that you see on the channel, that you really see in the video essays and a few of the lore discussions, would not be possible without their help. But over on the Patreon, you get sneak peeks of videos months in advance. Patrons also get priority on the Q&As. Every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul, and I give away a lot of good goodies in that. And it's also just really cool to talk to you guys in the DMs, and if some of you guys have theories that you want me to talk about on the channel, obviously I will talk about your theories. Just send them to me over on the Patreon. But with that being said, let's get into the review. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bring you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations chapter 68. And now that chapter 68 is done in the books, dude, do we got a lot to talk about, because this chapter dropped bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. There was a lot of information given to us, so like always, we're going to impact it, but I am going to go over first a couple of things that happened in the chapter that really grabbed my attention. So number one was obviously Ada pulling up. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of the character. I enjoy the character. I like that she pulled up in Konoha after she told Code that if I deem you to be a problem, myself and Damon will dispose of you, whether or not you got your limiters or not. So we at least have confirmation that Ada and Damon, in terms of raw power, they should still exceed Code's combat power even without limiters. That's a huge revelation that kind of puts me further on the fact that Code's on death watch, because Kishimoto's penchant for deception, betrayal, puppet master. So kind of curious to see where he goes with that one, and then how far he actually takes this, because Code's shown himself to be skilled enough in battle where even if there's a power gap, he should be able to, at the bare minimum, take down both of them. Damon's reflection ability is just the big problem. Like, Damon hasn't shown anything crazy in terms of combat ability outside of that reflection, and we know that there is a counter to it. Ada is keeping it a secret. So it's just one of those things. Code just has to avoid being hit, and those claw marks allow him to do that. The other thing that I found very interesting about this is the fact that Shikamaru was well aware the entire time that Code had actually marked him. That is a huge revelation right there. So backing things up a little bit, let's go to the start of the chapter. So I like how when everything opens up, you have two separate events that are taking place. So on one hand, you have Amado and Sai and Katasuke, and they're talking to Boruto, and Boruto's giving them the rundown on everything, and Boruto makes it known that, like, yeah, I think I can start channeling Momoshiki's power now. I don't need to keep taking Amado's Byakugan pills. And that's a nice moment of growth for Boruto, because what that's showing right there is that Boruto's gaining more confidence in himself. The karma was something that scared him and terrified him, but now that that whole specter of Momoshiki being able to resurrect in his body is gone, Boruto's no longer terrified of that power. In a way, he's kind of embraced it. And even though the chapter does confirm what I said last month, that I still think that there's a possibility that Momoshiki could take over Boruto's consciousness, just not resurrect, but still have Boruto go into that Boruto Shiki form. I like what we're getting here, because Boruto's saying, I'm in enough control now. I don't think that's something that can happen. So that's huge. That's a backdoor moment to where if Boruto is wrong, if he miscalculates, or if things get a little bit too crazy, Boruto might end up slipping. So that's interesting. That's a nice moment right there. And what I also like is the fact that Amado, as he's getting the information, Amado's just processing everything in real time. And what I like here is that Boruto breaks it down. He says that 82% of Momoshiki's DNA had already extracted, but Momoshiki took the remaining 18% in order to rebuild the parts of my body that were destroyed. Katasuke says that just given how crazy the Otsutsuki are in terms of what they're able to do with digitalizing their DNA, it's not crazy to say that they can pull something like this off. And Amado just dumps it down even further for the audience. Amado says that if Momoshiki died, then not only does he lose his vessel, he loses his soul. He makes the comparison that Otsutsuki can't make an omelet without breaking eggs, which is basically saying that Momoshiki had no choice but to save Boruto if he wanted to stay alive. And what I like right here is that as everybody starts getting super excited about the fact that Momoshiki's not gonna be able to take over again, Amado just brings down the hammer and says what I said last month, which is that the problem of him taking over Boruto's consciousness, that's still something that's going to happen, and that they don't have the solution. But Boruto's solution is very much like something that Naruto would have said, which is the fact that he's saying he can channel that power on his own. And what I like right here is that that's a very mature stance to take for somebody that's 14 years old. Like, Naruto was 16 going on 17 before Naruto said, like, yo, no excuses, I gotta master the Kyuubi's power. Boruto just jumped to that conclusion right away. Like, I can channel it and I'm not gonna make any excuses. That's so mature. And I like how the next thing that shifts over is that there's setup of something that I have an editor working on now, which is whether or not Naruto really should forgive Kawaki, or if it's even possible. I said it last month's chapter review that I do think that their relationship, it has changed a little bit. When Shikamaru and Ibiki and Naruto are watching Sumire and she's taking care of Kawaki, Naruto the whole time got a stern expression on his face and he's watching everything very closely. He's basically in Batman mood where he's brooding. You can tell that he's running through a bunch of different scenarios. And I think what this is showing right here is that even though Naruto took in Kawaki and had the best of intentions of bringing him along, it was one of those things where even Naruto realizes that the way they've done things with Kawaki, they can't continue on the same pace. And he's wondering if he made a mistake, in my opinion, because you have this moment where after they leave, Sumire says, like, Lord Seventh wasn't acting like himself, and Shikamaru tries to brush it off, and Shikamaru's like, yeah, you know, he just barely came back from being killed, you know, he's got every reason to be apprehensive. It isn't one of those things like that. Shikamaru was covering for Naruto. We know that based off of the chapter, but we also get more revelations on how cars and nanomachines work. So previously we were told, like, yo, the nanomachines inside of Kawaki, they're inside of its entire body. Now, it might have been stated in the anime when Katasuke is breaking down the detail for Kawaki's body for the 5 Kage, but this line in here that the nanomachines inside of Kawaki's blood fully healed him, that's one of those things. I think that's new information. We knew that he had nanomachines in his body, and the only way that works is if it's in the bloodstream, but the self-healing factor, that's interesting right there. And what I also like is that Shikamaru basically puts everything on the table and he says, we can't let Amado anywhere near Kawaki until we can confirm a few things. And Ibiki, he's showing like that part 1 Ibiki mind state where he's like, hey, are you sure you want to leave Kawaki unbounded, unattended? He's too strong. And Shikamaru just lays it out there. He's like, look, he's too powerful for us. If we try to restrain him, nobody could restrain him. If he wanted to just escape, he could use Sukuna Hikona and he'd be out of here. If we put a sealing jutsu on him to try and seal his chakra, he can just use karma to absorb it. Which, that just shows you that Kawaki has a lot of leverage, and whether or not he exercises it, that's going to be very interesting to see where Kawaki's mind state is, because it's one of those things where Shikamaru basically says, like, as long as Naruto is safe, Kawaki's not going to do anything. But if we ever make it look like Naruto's in trouble, things can go crazy. And what I like right here is that once Shikamaru says, as long as Naruto is safe, he has no beef with us, Naruto has that stern expression. He's got the speech bubble with the dots on it, which means that Naruto, he's in deep thought and he's considering something. I don't know what that's going to be, but what we have is that Naruto says that when Kawaki wakes up, they're going to have a very long talk. And that's very telling right there. Like, that is super telling that we got that moment. And what I like is that when Sumire begins to start pressing Shikamaru, that's when Sasuke shows up and we get a huge bombshell. The Boruto manga just basically confirmed the events of one of the Naruto movies. I believe the very first Naruto movie, which is the Clash in the Land of Snow. Because in this, when Sasuke shows up, Sasuke says that Boro's hideout is in the Land of Snow. Now, previously, I had said, hey, I think that this is in the Land of Iron, because the Land of Iron, which that's the place where the samurai are, that's where you had all that snow. I didn't think that they would go as far as like saying that this was in the Land of Snow. So that's pretty huge right there. And, you know, that's one of those things where, you know, my not being as familiar with filler and with the events of the movies, because as you guys know, I'm mainly strictly a Naruto manga fan. I just prefer manga over anime, but Boruto has consistently made it clear you gotta watch the anime and the manga to get the whole story in. That's a huge development. When Sasuke got all the intel, Sasuke said that Boro's coat, with it being in the Land of Snow, Basically, it's in the part of the country where even the locals consider it to be taboo. And from the looks of it, it looks like Boro still has his cult. So for people that, again, try and say, I don't really care for the Boruto anime, Boro's cult was already in the anime. We saw cult members get destroyed, but it looks like there were more members out there. That is potentially another plot device that's coming. So I do like seeing that. And basically, the intel that Sasuke gives is that he says that there was human experimentation, even unknown to Kara, even unknown to the scientific ninja tool research and development. And what's so crazy about this is that Jigen, at the bare minimum, knew that they disposed of whatever cyborgs they had at that facility, but there was other stuff going on there. So that's crazy. And Shikamaru says, like, hey, I'm going to deploy a team there. And Sasuke basically says, that's all cool, but I want to know what Kawaki did to Boruto. And the way that Sasuke just gives Shikamaru the side eye when Shikamaru confirms that Kawaki killed Boruto and that he did it in front of Naruto, you can tell that really got under Sasuke's skin. And what I like is that even though Shikamaru tells Sasuke that, like, yo, Boruto's okay, Sasuke's first response after that is, where's my student? That's telling, because now Naruto and Sasuke, they're on the same wavelength. And I think that, again, we're seeing more of that split with Kawaki and Boruto, and by extension, we're seeing the split with Kawaki and Konoha is slowly forming right here. So that's going to be very interesting, because Shikamaru is keeping that information of what Kawaki did to Boruto separate, because it's one of those things where there's a split coming and they're trying to prevent it, but it looks like it's going to be inevitable. And what we see is that even Ada, as she's watching everything, even she wasn't able to see it with her Senrigan. So there are limits. So when Momoshiki appeared in front of Boruto a few chapters ago, I said that, hey, Momoshiki stopped time all around the world. And a few of us were saying, well, maybe Ada's able to see with her Senrigan. But the thing that kind of got me is that, like, well, when you look at the chapter, even she had those clouds, which means that she was frozen in time. Ada confirms that she wasn't able to see anything of what happened with her Senrigan. That's a huge, huge moment. And just speaking of this moment right here, I like how when Damon is just trolling, saying, hey, is Boruto like a zombie right now? What I like is that Code is like, oh, it just must be good fortune. I guess it was meant to be. You're seeing some of that Otsutsuki worship come out of Code right here, and Ada just gives him a side eye. And for a second, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this is going to be more foreshadowing for a future betrayal. No, she just says it right out. You keep screwing up, you're dead. Damon and I will kill you. We have a business partnership. This is not a friendship. If you don't uphold your end of the bargain, you're dead, with or without limiters. So, like I've been saying for the last few chapters, a split is coming between those two. It's just a matter of when. The chapter then transitions over and you have Shikamaru. He goes in to speak to Amado, and you just see more foreshadowing, because Amado gets asked directly by Shikamaru, I want to know why you gave Kawaki the karma without his consent. That's not how we do things like that in Konoha. I know you said that Boruto's blood analysis says he's 100% Otsutsuki. However, I don't give a damn about that. I want to know what you're really after. And as they're having the conversation, you have Boruto dodging bullets when he's talking to Sarada and Mitsuki. Mitsuki's like, wait a second, didn't Code want to feed you to the Ten Tails? You had to be alive, right? Why'd he try and kill you? And that's when you get more of the revelation that Boruto's forbidden to talk about what really happened. And that's when Sasuke shows up and says, you got to be careful, and so does Amado, because Code is coming. You shift back and you have Amado tell Shikamaru that, look, Kawaki chose his path. I knew that if I told him I could give him karma and leave the option up to him, he would hate the idea of having karma. So I just put it on him. And by going through this emotional response that he had, he's the one that awakened it. I just gave him the means to it. And Shikamaru basically says, like, I don't get it. I don't want to hear you giving me these half-truths. You're obsessed with Kawaki's karma in particular. And before Amado can answer, that's when Code shows up. And when Code shows up out the claw marks, we have that very telling line where Ada says, you fool, the conversation was just getting interesting. So you're seeing yet again the seeds for potential betrayal, and Kishimoto dropped in a very telling line again earlier in the chapter. Even after you get your limiters removed and your powers regained, if I deem you to be a further problem, I will have you killed. Damon and I will kill you. Ada was annoyed because that's key information about Kawaki's karma that they're going to need. So now this opens up the possibility of Ada keeping Amado alive long enough to learn about that. Amado, by Code's own action, has now bought himself some extra time. I think that that's the case right there. And what I like is that when Code attacks Shikamaru, Amado says, like, you idiot, you showed up here, you're going to be sensed by Konoha, all these shinobi are going to be on you. Code basically says, I don't care about those shinobi. All you got to do is just look at my eyes, give the command. It's going to take a few seconds. You can take my limiters off. And Amado starts to panic because Amado looks at it and he says, okay, wait a second. That's information he should know. So you can tell, like, Amado right now is kind of caught off guard. And when Ino starts communicating with Shikamaru, Shikamaru says, you just need to inform Naruto and the others. Don't send anybody else here. And it's because Code is strong enough to where it's not that many people that can stand up to him. And Shikamaru places Code under the shadow paralysis jutsu, and he basically threatens Amado. He says that, I don't care about this shadow paralysis jutsu. I can still slash his corduroy. Amado, you know I'm not bluffing, so go ahead, give the command, take my limiters off. And Shikamaru, as he's holding the shadow paralysis jutsu, he reveals that he knew that he was marked the entire time. And he says it's showtime, wake up Bronco. And that's when we get this new version of Delta, and basically the ninja tech inside of her body has been reprogrammed, and now she is an ally of Konoha, and she attacks Code and just levels this dude. So I do like seeing that because it is a payoff to what we had in the past in the anime, where you had the hints of Code versus Delta in the anime. So I like that we're getting a payoff to that right here in the manga. And Code at that point marks the area around him, and Shikamaru thinks he's trying to escape, and that's not what Code's doing. Code reaches through his claw marks and he pulls Ada out. And I got to give Ikimoto some credit for the paneling on this one. The way that he slowed down the actual frames on this, and you saw the process where you see Ada's hand get pulled out. Then you see the reactions to Delta and Shikamaru, and Code starts gloating like, nah, it's the opposite. I wasn't trying to escape. Then you see her arm get pulled out, and then you see Ada begin to step through, and then you get a split page spread where it's a single page, but the two panels on the page are Ada, the long panel, and then you see Ada's face. The only critique I would say on that is that it would have made more sense if you would have saw Ada's face first and then you see the whole body emerge out of that, but that still works either way. So that's good. That's good. I like seeing a little bit more risk placed here, and then we get the ending shot where Amado is pissing himself, and you see Ada looking over at Amado, and Amado says her name. And that's how the chapter ends off. I gotta say, for this chapter right here, there was a lot of stuff that happened. This was very dialogue heavy, but this is a chapter where there's a lot to kind of unpack right here. So I'm very curious to see where Kishimoto takes this on this next part, because this still feels like the Search for Tsunade, where there's a lot of setup, but now things are kind of ramping up. Search for Tsunade segued into the Sasuke retrieval arc, and that ended up being a moment where the framework for the next 200 chapters was established. So I'm very curious to see where that's going. Does Ada run off for Kawaki? Does Ada interrogate Amado and get the information she needs? And then as Ada fights Delta and Shikamaru, does Naruto and Sasuke show up? This is very curious to see where this is going. So my chapter question to you guys is, number one, how do you feel about Naruto and Sasuke both seemingly being on the same page when it comes to Kawaki, that something needs to be done? That it's implied, in my opinion, that that's the stance that they took. And then how do you feel about Ada's threat to Code? I've let it be known a few times, even though Ada says that she's only good at simple taijutsu, at the end of the day, she's still got the raw power that's needed. And this chapter confirmed it, because she didn't say, I'll have Damon kill you. She said that we will kill you. So I do feel like a betrayal is coming, but I want to know from you guys, how do you guys feel about that? Let me know down in the comment section below. So always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Have an awesome day, guys.